listening to Zap Night, a video game review podcast. Join your hosts as we review video games from all systems and all genres. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Zap Night. I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm your co-host, Kaylee.
This is episode 54, and we are talking about a video game.
Very good.
A video game, a Final Fantasy video game. And this video game includes a power-hungry empire who is mining magic source, a science experiment on humans that has gone wrong, creating a super soldier who's able to wield magic, a failed science experiment. Did I say that already? Failed science experiment, turning one of the super soldiers into a power-hungry antagonist. A girl with very special ancestry, who is sought after by the Empire. A guy who promises to protect her at any cost. Recruiting a team of other powerful and magic-wielding friends to take down this crazy antagonist. And then the antagonist seeks to destroy the world and is stopped by the team of friends. Does this sound familiar?
Yes.
It sounds like Final Fantasy VII.
Yes.
It is not. We are talking about Final Fantasy VI. Sorry for the weird intro. What am I pulling, a Seth and Evan or what?
Seth and Evan. You kind of forgot about, well, I guess if you're comparing it to 7. I was a little disappointed you didn't mention the Unga Bunga guy.
Why? What's the Unga Bunga guy?
One of your like 50 billion characters.
Right, yeah, I know, but what does that have to do with 7? I don't.
Nothing.
Oh.
I was a little disappointed till you were.
Oh, I see. I wasn't gonna go through the whole story.
I wasn't
sure. No, I just wanted to make note that those
so
those things are very specific to 6, but they're also weirdly specific to 7 as well. And honestly, I've noticed that this game is very similar in many, many ways to Final Fantasy VII. So in any case, today we're talking about Final Fantasy VI. We beat it.
Yay!
Today.
Somehow, finally.
So today...
We started in May.
We did. Yeah, we did. And this has been a long game. I forgot to write down my time. What was yours?
Yours was like 35 hours. Mine was like 37.
I thought mine was like 45 hours. Hang on. I wrote it down. Yours was 37:59.
Almost 38 hours, which we kind of knew going into this that it was going to be a really long game.
It was going to be, yeah, that we were thinking that it was going to be about a 40-hour game.
Which, by far, has been the longest since we started the Final Fantasies in somewhat order.
Right. Mine was 45:56.
Oh, wow. I thought it was 35 hours for some reason.
45:56, so an extra, like, 10 hours for me. I played it specifically on the Super Nintendo version. You played it on the Game Boy Advance. I think the biggest problem that I had as far as like time management was that I had to level all of my characters individually, where you didn't have to do that. So, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that, but that's where the time difference comes in. So this game was developed by Square at the time. I don't know if it was Square or Squaresoft.
I think it was Squaresoft. Yeah.
Yes, Squaresoft. Booklet is right there. Squaresoft. So it was developed and produced by Squaresoft. It was released on the Super Nintendo in 1994. And then it was re-released as Final Fantasy Anthologies on the PlayStation 1 in 1999. 1990. We went back in time. Very weird.
Time travel included.
And then it was re-released on the Game Boy Advance in 2007. And that's just North America. It kind of varies a couple years for the Japanese, but North America, those were the release dates. However, the PAL region, so like the UK and those, they didn't see this game until the PS1 release in 2002.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know why, but those poor guys didn't. Now, so there's a funny thing, and we kind of talked about this when we played Final Fantasy IV. So this game is Final Fantasy VI. It is the 6th release in the Final Fantasy series, but in the North America, it's Final Fantasy III.
You mean North America?
Yes.
Okay.
What did I say?
No, you're right.
Yeah, so in North America, it was Final Fantasy III. And that's because in North America, Final Fantasy I was Final Fantasy I in North America, Final Fantasy IV was Final Fantasy II in North America, and Final Fantasy VI was Final Fantasy III in North America. And then we got reset when Final Fantasy VII hit, and it was called Final Fantasy VII in North America. So, like, very confusing, very weird, but that's why my game cartridge and some of the other, like, official stuff out there says Final Fantasy III, but it really is the Final Fantasy VI, the 6th Final Fantasy game in the Final Fantasy series. So that's out of the way. I feel like I have to announce. Really, I have to announce this every time that we have one of these episodes where we are talking about that, like Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy III. It's confusing and it's stupid. I don't know why they did it that way.
We don't have to talk about it anymore.
We don't. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is it. Final Fantasy VII is going to be amazing. Yay. Anyway, but yeah, the PAL region didn't see it until the PlayStation version, unfortunately. But yeah, very interesting similarities to Final Fantasy VII. But we can let's get into the story.
So your game begins with the Empire, which they renamed it in mine to like Emperor Gustalia or something like that.
Really?
So, yeah, there's quite a few different things compared to your version to my version.
Like, they didn't really specify.
It was just the Empire.
It was just the Empire, yeah.
In any case, you start off with the Empire, who has been using these espers, which they're like magical beings.
They're the summons.
Yeah.
That they use them as summons.
They use magic, which at this time there's really no magic anymore.
Right.
Anyway, they've been using these espers to fuel their various forms of magitech and magitech like research that they've going on, which is just magical research. I think is just like they're shrunk down into magitech.
Yeah, they're essentially like farming the espers to fuel their magic source. But at the beginning, you don't really know what's going on.
So they get kind of word that the mining city of Narsh has dug up this like frozen esper that's been encapsulated in like ice and all that, and they actually send out 3 Imperial soldiers to go retrieve this esper. One of which is one of your many main characters, Terra, who is actually under control of the Empire via this, like, they call it the slave crown. I don't know if they call it in yours.
Yeah, I think they did.
Which I think is such a weird name to...
I mean, it was a mind control device.
In any case, so they plow through this town trying to find this esper, and when they actually confront it, something happens between Terra and this
There's a reaction
esper,
between the esper and Terra.
She basically blacks out, and you wake up in this like random dude's house, which is very alarming.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, okay.
But the guy actually removes her crown because he finds her. I don't know. I guess the other 2 like Imperial.
They died in whatever reaction happened between Terra and.
They're the only ones that have ever been named.
Oh yeah, it was Biggs and Wedge. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so. She wakes up and this crown is gone, and she doesn't regain her memories, but she has control basically over her mind and what
she realizes that she was under control.
So in an attempt to still retrieve this esper, Kefka, who he's just a general, isn't he?
I think he was the I think it was the Chancellor.
Was he? I didn't want to say Chancellor, but I'm like, always the Chancellor.
It's always the Chancellor. I'm pretty sure he was the Chancellor, or like, yeah, the like war general. I think.
War general. I think that might have been it.
I think that they call him by both. So
he is a man of power.
Yeah, he was like the second man from the Emperor himself.
So in any case, by going to retrieve this Esper, the Empire going to retrieve this Esper actually results in another encounter with Terra and this Esper. And
so, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but to back up a little bit, Terra, when she wakes up at that random guy's house, the random guy is actually part of a group of the Returners. And the Returners are like a resistance to the Empire. And they are kind of trying to talk her into helping them fight back against the Empire, mainly because she has this mysterious use of magic that nobody else has. So obviously she's a prime like individual to help fight back. And so she is, kind of persuaded more or less to help the Returners fight and push the Empire back. And that's when Kefka comes and re-infiltrates the town of Narsh, trying to retrieve that Esper. And that's when Terra and the Returners, including Locke and like Sabin and I think Edgar at the time.
Was Celeste there too?
Yeah, she was.
Because she has also been infused with
her like
this
whole backstory. We're trying not to go into all the backstories, but yeah, there's a lot of different members that you meet along the way, and they all kind of get together and join the Returners to fight back against the Emperor and the Empire and Kefka, who's coming into Narsh to retrieve the Esper.
Nicely worded.
Yeah, I do it again.
So, with us encountering this Esper for a second time, it actually has that same reaction again. And it sends Terra into this, like, frenzy, almost.
Yeah, like a crazed state.
She turns all, like, glittery.
Yeah,
almost.
she turns all, like, purpley white and then just flies out, like, screaming. And she flies off and heads to a different continent. And that's when your now team is
going to find
her.
And so they actually come across the Esper Rumma. And he has actually escaped from the capital city of the Empire called Vector. And Rumma tells them that in order to really get Terra to snap out of this, that she could really benefit from the help of the Espers that have actually been captured by the Empire inside the Empire's capital.
I don't think at this time that the team really understands what's going on
about it.
What's going on with Terra. Like, he knows Rumma knows what's going on with Terra, but the team doesn't really understand. But they're kind of going off of this blind faith that Rumma knows. So they're, obviously the Empire's doing something shady in this Vector town, so they're going to Vector to figure out, 1, what's going on, and 2, to help free the other captors.
So the party goes to Vector, and they actually learn that what the Empire has been using these Espers for, which they didn't even realize that they were using these Espers. But basically, they've been draining them of their magical power to really help fuel their magitech and all of their weapons and research and all that. So the Espers, when you finally, Kefka was like, when they were done, they were like ditching them at the bottom of this pit and stuff.
Yeah, really, and he didn't know. And you find out about Sid too in this part.
Oh yeah.
And Sid is the one who's been like leading the research on the Espers, and Sid's pretty much fed up with it too. Like, he doesn't agree with the way that they're going about this research, where basically all these Espers are locked in tubes and being sucked of their energy source and then thrown into a pit. Well, when you finally go and you find the Espers, they actually reveal that their magic source can be condensed into a single magicite gem. And when they do this, it kills them, but it grants the holder of that gem their magical power. So that's kind of where you start infusing yourself with the magic of the magicite, and collecting all the different magicites and using them in battle. But in any case, this is where you find them, and they condense themselves into the crystal and give you their power,
so that they can use them to really...
Right. And you take those back to Terra.
Yes, so you return to Terra, and Terra actually reacts to them, and it calms her down. And actually, she reacts to a specific magicite that we were debating on how this is pronounced. We've decided on Madoon.
Yeah, well.
Which gives her memory back. Because, well, not really her memory, but I guess her memory, but her backstory as well.
Right, yeah.
Because up until that point, she had no idea who she even was.
Right, so ever since she had the crown on, she couldn't remember her history. And then when she interacts with these espers, it brings back her memory. And that's where she tells the story of, where she came from. And really who espers are as
how they
a
got
group.
into this world.
Right.
Because they didn't belong in that world to begin with.
Right.
So the returners actually asked Terra to go back to the Esper world to help convince these Espers to help fight against the Empire, who has been obviously using their people as batteries.
Well, I'm going to back you up again. Terra's backstory, I wanted to talk about that because it's kind of important to the overall story. Terra is, you find out when she gets her memory back, you find out that Terra is half human and half Esper. And it shows that, the world could, the two worlds could come together and work in harmony, though they don't currently. And the Espers live in the world of Espers, a different dimension from the humans, but there's a gate between the two. And currently it's sealed, but they are trying to, they're asking Terra to go and unseal the gate because she's the only one that could go and convince the people, the Espers, to come and aid in the fight back against the Empire. Which at this point, the Espers have every reason to, because the Espers themselves have been trapped.
Yes.
So they have every reason to.
So she actually agrees to go, and you go through the process, and as Terra goes to the Esper world, they're unexpectedly followed by the Emperor and Kefka, who end up taking these three specific statues. They're called the Warring Triad.
Yeah.
And by messing with these statues, it actually causes a continent on Earth to rise into the floating island.
Yeah, these statues aren't just statues. They're like the balance of magic that exists in the world. And they're placed very specifically to keep that balance. And as Kefka moves these around, it causes an imbalance in the world. And he's able to manipulate the world, and he's able to manipulate magic as a whole, causing the continent to break away and float away. And, all right, you can kind of continue from there.
I mean, your team actually goes to the island via airship, and they confront both the Emperor and Kefka. And this is kind of the turning point, because Kefka at this point has just been part of the Empire, where this is the turning point where he's actually going really insane. He's always been insane.
Yeah, he was insane to begin with.
And he actually ends up killing the Emperor.
Sure.
So with murdering the Emperor, he also messes with the alignment of these statues, which is what he was after to begin with. Then this upsets the balance of magic in the entire world, really, and it nearly destroys it.
It basically, the Earth's crust crumbles apart and breaks apart, and the Earth itself starts to die. And you see that the land starts to decay and the water starts to blacken, and the team tries to leave the continent before it breaks apart, and they escape through the with the airship, but the airship gets caught in the chaos.
Yeah.
And the team ends up being scattered across the world, and then you're joined with. Then you follow Celeste.
Celeste. It's been a whole year.
Yeah, a year later.
She's been in a coma for a whole year, which I have beef with this because she just gets up and starts walking.
She gets up and starts fishing. She's like, oh no, because she wakes up and she's with Sid. And because so a little backstory of Sid, because he was the scientist pulling the magic from the Espers, he was also infusing the soldiers with the magic. And Kefka was the first one,
which is what destroyed his mind.
It was a failed one, and you learn from like one little conversation with. I'm surprised you know this.
Yeah, I did.
One little conversation with the soldier that says like, yeah, Kefka was actually like a failed experiment by Sid, and you find this out, and it turns out that Sid was the one who was infusing all these, and Sid has this special relationship with Celes because she was infused with the Esper magic from a very young age. So her and Sid are kind of
like grandparent.
Yeah, she ends up calling him granddad,
which is really weird.
It is, because it kind of comes from nowhere. Like I understand I understand that there's history there, but from like my point of view, it came out of nowhere. Yeah.
But yeah, a whole year has passed, which I think is still very strange to me.
She's in a coma for a whole year.
Seriously, and
I think it's just to show that
time has passed. Everybody has moved around.
Time has passed. People have moved around, and cities are starting to rebuild as best they can, saying that humanity's fighting back. Not necessarily that they can, but they're trying.
It also seems kind of like a cop-out for like, well, that's how... Because Kefka actually builds a tower, and there's also another tower like dedicated to him.
Yeah, the followers of Kefka.
And so basically it shows that passage of time has happened and things are just different in your wake.
So when Celes wakes up and Sid tells her about all these things that are going on, that Kefka is kind of ruling the world with these the
statues.
What is it that they call that beam?
Oh yeah, is it the Tower of Judgment or something like that?
The Light of Judgment?
Light of Judgment.
Something like that.
Because you see it's like a beam.
And it like destroys towns sometimes whenever Kefka feels like it. And some towns get hit worse than others. And, that's kind of what...
He's acting God, basically.
From Celeste's point of view, he is... It's terrible. From everyone's point of view, it's terrible. So she goes out and seeks to find the rest of the group. So she has to hunt down the whole team, which is, once you get to this world of ruin part, you're about at the halfway point. Yeah. Like you have it's very linear up to this point, and then once you there's a few linear things that you don't have a choice but to do. And then it becomes an open world game, and you can do whatever you want, and it kind of gets confusing after that.
It definitely gets confusing.
But the point is, Celeste goes and finds the whole group again. Tara, Locke, Edgar, Sabin, Gao.
All 20 of them.
Yeah, there's a lot. Is there 20?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say.
No.
I'm sure we could count them out. Anyway, so she rounds them all up, and they find a new airship, and they make their way to Kefka, and they go to Kefka's tower, and they confront. The statues are actually turned to monsters, or maybe their original form. I don't really know. But you fight the statues and you break the statues down, which should disrupt the power
of Kefka,
but it doesn't, because Kefka's absorbed all of the power from the statues. So you go and you confront Kefka himself, who is still he's kind of still the same person. He's just like more... He's like, he knows, he feels like he knows that he's the most powerful thing in the world, so he's arrogant like that. So you fight Kefka, you kill Kefka, as you do, and because Kefka infused himself with the power of the statues, the magic source and the magic balance is completely gone. And so magic begins to fade from the world, as well as Espers. And everyone's kind of concerned that Tara's going to disappear too, but because her heart is so strong or something with human life, that she can be fully human instead of half and half, I guess. because that's how it works. Because that's how it works. And so she gets to live, and she's, she rejoices with the rest of the world, and
she gets to be a mommy.
Yeah, kind of.
To these orphan children.
Yeah, lots and lots of orphan children. But yeah, and then the world kind of returns back to normal, I guess.
Just rebuild,
yes.
basically.
And I think that was part of what they were trying to get across to Kefka. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you destroy these towns, they're going to keep rebuilding. Right. As long as they possibly can. That's just human nature.
Just the power of love.
So yeah, that really is the gist of Final Fantasy VI in a nutshell. There's a lot of backstory to every single one of these characters. There's a lot of, there's a lot of character development. A big turning point for me, so I wasn't really invested in the story. Like the first, 5 to 10 hours, I really didn't want to play this game. And then we got to the Opera House, and I fell in love with this game at the Opera House. I hated so I played this game once before, quite a few years back. I don't remember a whole lot of it, playing it again. But I didn't like the Opera House the first time through, and this time I freaking loved it. It was so great. I guess just to tell that story, your goal, you go to the Opera House following somebody who has an airship, and you're hoping to encounter this guy who has the airship, but Celeste has to perform in the opera in order to get kidnapped by the guy who has the airship.
She's posing as Maria.
Right.
Because apparently she's a spitting image of her.
Yeah. And when you start, it's basically Locke and Celeste. And Locke is saying, okay, you should be in this place so that maybe you'll get captured and you'll get to go onto the airship, and you're this general of the Empire, so you should just be able to tear down this guy and steal the airship, right? But she's so excited to be in this performance, and you see it, and it's like, there's a little bit of character development prior to this part for Celeste, but this moment, it's like she plays all nervous, but in reality, she's super excited, and it's so cute to see her nervous and excited, and then you have to learn the lines so that you get the play right, otherwise you lose and you gotta try again. It's cute and it's fun, and I enjoyed it.
It was the one sweet thing of this game.
Yeah, it kind of was.
Ultros was kind of a comic relief. A little bit. I like Ultros.
They have one of those, it seems like every Final Fantasy has one of those, wonky bosses that's just there to kind of be annoying. Biggs and Wedge is kind of like that in Final Fantasy VIII. You gotta fight Biggs and Wedge over and over and over again, and they're just, goofy, bosses. But that's kind of how Ultros was. I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. So, yes. What'd you give it for a story, first off?
I gave it a 9.
I gave it a 9 also.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I gave it a 9 also.
One of the things I wanted to mention, which will also kind of segue into my other thing, this Cid seemed like he had the least, Sidness to him and of all the games prior.
Yeah.
He really was not there a whole lot, and he looked very strange.
I know what you were gonna say. Yes, he does. No. Cid, yeah, he is kind of a weird character in this game.
It's they kind of expected you to know, yeah, you know what a Cid does, so yeah, he's this guy doing this. He wasn't there, he really didn't have much on-screen time, and then when you threw the whole grandpa thing in there, it was just huh?
It was they were trying to make him this important character, and he kind of wasn't.
Yeah.
And then, for me anyway, when you're on the deserted island, you have this option to save Cid from, I don't know, pneumonia or something.
Yeah, he was sick.
And, if you don't save him, he dies. Not that it really impacts the story a whole lot, but you could save him or he dies. And in my game, he died.
He died in mine too.
And really, it was sad. I was sad for Celeste, but it wasn't really that impactful because I didn't know the character that well.
And to me, as a first time player, he was in the Empire doing Empire stuff. To me, he was bad.
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing.
And, like, he knew that they were doing these things to the Espers and just then had a change of heart. It was like...
Well, okay, so you do see him later you do see him when you go and invade the Empire at the, like, Magicite factory or whatever. And, he does help your party out in trying to escape and trying to, you know...
That doesn't make things better, dude.
I know.
Like, this is a terrible thing you've done.
No, I know.
And it's not like he unknowingly did it. Like, he knew what he was doing.
He was
draining
the
these
one
beings
developing all the science behind the Magitech stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
The other thing... I realize that there's so many characters, and it was already a 40-hour game, roughly. Of all the stories to have backstory, I would have wanted more of Celeste, and maybe even Terra, of, like, how... Because you know that they took over her mind, like, Terra's mind. They took over Terra's mind.
And how? How did that come to be?
Because, you know, in the backstory of Terra coming to the world after being born as a half-human, half-Esper... You know that she's a baby when the Empire has her, so what about this growing up process? And what about Celeste?
No. So, the way that I understand Terra's backstory is that her mom comes to the Esper world somehow, just shows up one day, and the Espers are, like, confused about her being there, and they are going to escort her back. But she ends up saying, you know, I don't really like anybody back in my world. Let me just stay here. And they're weary about it because she's human. But, like, one of the Esper men like her enough to help her stick around. They end up having a baby, and the Empire shows up, and they escape, don't they? The mom and Terra. They escape back to the human world.
Oh,
I think that was it. Like, they just escaped. Like, they didn't necessarily... I don't think the Empire took Terra.
That's the way I understood it. But again, they don't really explain
Yeah, I know.
And they don't really explain...
It was a very brief segment.
Yes.
It was like Terra's memory came back, and then you had a cutscene of her memory. And it was, like, very brief and didn't explain everything super well. So, I mean, and plus it was a long time ago in our story. So, like, I don't know exactly. I didn't, like, make notes as I was playing.
The other thing, though...
Maybe I should start, though.
And that's kind of the other thing, like, this is the one thing preventing it. There's a couple things preventing it from being a 10, but it still was a 9 to me. But who is the main character? Because to me, I thought it was Terra. And so to not have enough backstory is just like, really, there is no main character. Everyone is a character.
I would say the main characters would be Terra, Locke, and Celeste. I think those are the main characters.
Which, again, almost none of them have that much I can understand Locke not having much of a backstory, but Celeste and Terra seem like kind of like the grandpa thing. Like, you couldn't throw a little bit of more extra dialogue in there?
You get a backstory for all of them. I mean, you don't get a whole lot, but I mean, you get a little bit for all of them. And yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from all of them, but I mean, you get what you get. I mean, it's a little bit from all of them, and you have so many characters that a little bit from all of them is not a terrible thing. You get a lot of story.
Now, what about Gogo, the Yeti?
They were just fillers.
Mog.
They were just fun little side quests. That's really all they were.
It was kind of an annoyance. Shadow was a huge annoyance to me.
Yeah, me too.
And I felt like he could have been enjoyable if he was a mandatory character, but this wishy-washiness...
I think that Shadow's character was a filler character. He was a character that they needed an empty spot in your party, so they threw Shadow in, who could just randomly leave when you're about to get another character. And that happened a lot, and I noticed that too much, that he would just like magically be like, well, I'm out, and then would disappear just as you're about to get another character in. So it was like they were trying to give you enough characters to be able to fight through the area that you were in, but like he wasn't important to the story enough.
And see, that was kind of a
it was
shame.
Dumb.
If he was, I would have been interested in his character a lot more. Because, like, the dog was kind of, like, Interceptor. I thought that was kind of cute.
I know.
I don't know. I just... those few things
made it weird.
It was such a good game. Like, the story really was good, though. I really liked
the main story was really good. I was a little disappointed with the second half of the story, because it was like the first half of the story with, you know, the everything prior to the world of Ruin, like everything in the main world, that was great story.
Really? I think it's the other way around.
That was the story of the game. Then the world of Ruin happens, and you are given this open world, and that's it. Like, you have this open world, and your goal is find your characters and kill Kefka. Like, that's it. That's your goal. You kind of get backstory of some of your characters as you go along, and some, like, what things that they've been doing in that past year, but that's about it. Like, there's no like overall story impacting things that are going on.
I think with Kefka's character specifically, like, you realize that he's already insane, but him breaking and really seeing that insane spiral is really what I wanted to know more about Kefka, I guess.
Me too, yeah.
And, you know, the one downside too is after you awaken as Celeste, you don't see Kefka till the very end, which is really sad because he's such a great villain.
I have played every Final Fantasy.
He's a true villain.
I have played the only Final Fantasies I haven't played to completion is Final Fantasy 11 and Final Fantasy 14. So I can't attest to those two. But Final Fantasy 1 through 15, minus those two, Kefka is the best villain, period. Sephiroth is cool, but like, Kefka is just pure evil. He's so evil. And I like that about him. Like, he makes for the best villain.
What I have been saying over the past couple Final Fantasies is you always want the villain to have like a backstory. Why are you like this? What is
right? Yeah.
And for Kefka, it seems like such a pure, like, it's kind of a simplistic way of looking at it. He's just insane. But on the flip side, he's insane,
and you see it,
yeah.
and even the Empire knows it, and I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah,
so like, as you're playing the game, like, even the soldiers in the towns are like, man, Kefka's insane. Like, they're like, everybody else is fine, but man, Kefka, ever since he came around, it's been crazy. And, you know, he goes and, like, poisons an entire village for no reason. Like, he does this, and everyone else is like, there's so many other ways we could have gone about this. We didn't have to kill. And he's like, kill them all. Just kill. You know, he's crazy. And it's great. I mean, it's great for the story.
No, yeah.
You know, I don't
killing civilians.
I don't personally like evil people. It's just, if you're going to have evil in a game like this is like the best villain I could possibly form.
My husband gives me flack for this, but I do appreciate like a good villain, and this, it really is. I can't attest for all of the rest of the Final Fantasies, but by far of even media besides Final Fantasy, it is a really one of my favorite villains.
Kefka really is like the best villain.
His laugh.
I know, his laugh. I love his laugh. It's so iconic. They did so good about that.
You see Kefka, though, later depicted kind of like with a clown, like, feeling. He wasn't very clown-like. Like, I mean, it's still, it was fine. Like, his character design of they've made him now is fine to me. But it's still,
you're talking like Dissidia and
But like, thinking about him like that, fighting in the Empire is like, why would you be dressed like that?
I think that they did like overdress him in the game. Like, you can tell that he's a little bit crazier than, you know, the rest of like, the Emperor himself was dressed in very formal. I mean, from the pixel sprites that you're given, he's very formal.
Like
Emperor. Where Kefka really was a little crazier dressed, crazier colors, not so muted, very bright and vivid, and you could tell that he was a little crazy. And I think that they were going for that, and I think that they pushed that from just like crazy outfit to like clown, and I don't think that really matches the essence of what they were going for in the game, but I mean, it's okay. I think that in Dissidia,
Yeah.
in Dissidia, I think that his outfit is a little over the top, and the way he like dances around is a little over the top.
I think his character is not completely, but a little more different than how he was in the game too. Because while he was insane, he wasn't like. I don't think he was trying to be funny.
Right. I don't think he was trying to be comedic in any way. I think he was just so crazy that it came off as awkward and like he might be comedic, but I think that they were just going for pure insanity. Yeah. I don't know. Kefka is the best villain. I honestly he made this game so much better. If it was like Sephiroth instead, I think it would have been a little more moody and blah.
We could talk about this more in music later too, but I thought his theme music was perfect for him. Perfect.
We will talk about that.
So graphics. Speaking of those pixel sprites.
Yes.
What did you give graphics?
A 10.
Really?
Yes, I did.
I gave it an 8.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the downfalls then. I think the only bad thing that I could say about it was that I kind of wish that the Espers had more movement. And I say this about all the Final Fantasy games. I know that Final Fantasy VII, they have an animation, which is different. But, like, I really, for some reason, my brain says that at some point, 1 through 6, that the Esper, or the summons had some sort of, like, movement to them. Like, not much, just, like, a few frames of, like, a gesture implying that they are producing the magic, not just like a sprite that whooshes away on screen and that's it, which is how this game was. It was just like a sprite showed up, a magic thing happened, and the sprite flew away. It wasn't like the sprite moved at all, though they could have. It wouldn't have been that difficult. Did we see the ending? The ending was beautiful.
Yes.
And yet, like, they couldn't have just animated the sprites for the Espers. I don't know. That was my thing.
I was going between an 8 and a 9.
Okay.
This is kind of petty of me, I guess, but like the like textures, if you will, or like the patterns that they lay down, you see them mirrored a lot, and that bothers me. Like the clouds, you could see it being mirrored a lot. A lot of the cliffs, I couldn't figure out what was a door and what was just the cliffs being weird because they mirrored it.
I had that problem too, yeah.
The other thing is, I mean, they were good, like, especially after things were being destroyed. Like, the destroyed houses and stuff, like, placing them in the water.
Looked
I mean, that was really good. But I guess it's just, nothing really stood out. I don't know. I guess, like, it's hard to explain. I don't know. That's just it. I wasn't blown away.
Yeah, sure. I think that not that it's fair to compare to I guess the only compared game in all of Super Nintendo would be maybe Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is like also a 10 out of 10 in graphics to me. Chrono Trigger has so many good design choices all the way through. This game wasn't quite to what Chrono Trigger is. I did see a lot of like weirdly placed graphics that, you know, yeah, it was kind of awkwardly placed, but it didn't distract me at all from the concept. There was a few spots where, like you said, I couldn't tell if it was a door or if it was just like a cliff because it was kind of hidden. But I mean, it just was kind of like bad choices by the developers, not necessarily like the graphics having a problem.
Sure.
But like the magic looked amazing.
Oh, magic looked really good, especially when you hit multiples and it would, oh, it was so satisfying.
Yeah, it was.
That said, though, a little disappointed with not all, but some of the like more ultimate magic, like Meteor. We were discussing this earlier. I was not impressed with Meteor. I was kind of like, it's this animation again.
Yeah.
And usually I was just associating it with being pummeled to death.
Yeah. Ultima was pretty cool.
Yes, I like
Flare was not impressive at all. Like
I actually didn't see Flare.
You didn't?
No, because
you probably saw it by the other enemies.
I might have. Yeah.
It was like
must not have been.
It was like a red spot that hit you and like grew out, and then it would like turn red again and like have these little beams of like fire energy spreading out, and like the screen would kind of like darken too when it happened. I mean, it wasn't spectacular, but it was cool. Again, comparing it to Chrono Trigger did their magic way better. Like Lightning 2 is like the coolest move in the game. Or like Luminaire. Oh my gosh. We need to play that game. That game's going to end up being a 10 out of 10 in every category.
I did like, though, the variety in the characters, especially their designs. I loved Setzer, by the way.
Did you really?
His character wasn't too impressive, but I really liked his design.
I liked his design okay, but I didn't really like him at all. Like, he was not memorable. He was just like a filler for somebody to fly that. He was like Sid number 2.
I enjoyed, he didn't have a backstory, but a side story that I actually really liked.
I think they could have merged Sid with him.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
I think that they could have like somehow.
They should have. He was with the airship.
He somehow like Sid sneaks away and kidnaps Maria, at the opera house, and then I don't know.
I also liked the little like animations. Because they didn't do it very often, but like the little like finger shaking and the and the winking,
I love
the laughing.
Yes, the winking was really funny. Locke, when you go into Narsh towards the end of the game, Locke has to unlock all the doors for you to be able to get in. And he like walks up and he kind of knocks on the door, and then he turns around and winks and then opens the door. And if you go there without Locke in your party, you can't. You just walk up and it says locked. So I knew ahead of time all those doors were locked, and then you bring Locke in and he's like, haha, and then he opens the door. It's so cool. It's so fun.
Some of the chuckling animations, it's hysteric when seeing it from Kefka, because he's insane.
Yeah.
But it's also charming when it's your characters, because of course this game is very dark.
Yeah.
And so when they're laughing, it's just it seemed almost genuine for sprites.
They portrayed emotions really well. And that was part of what I liked about it too, is that all the sprite animations were really, really good at portraying emotion. And even when they had a moment where I think it was the opera house where Celeste is like crying over the balcony. You can see the little sparkles of tears. They did really good with just those. Like it was so emotional and powerful, and it just by the way, to be done on a Super Nintendo with sprites like this is amazing.
I loved her design for that.
I did too. It was so cute.
I also we talked about this earlier, but I really liked Terra's like trance. I thought the hair was a little. I don't want to say it was too much, but it was crazy. But it, like the trans colors, they did so good on that.
And like, I find it funny that you call them trans, because that's a thing that happens in.
That's what it's called in my game.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
see, for me, it's called morph.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that she morphs into Esper form. So I mean, it makes sense, I guess. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
In your game, you have little like sprite icons during the dialogue. And that would have helped me a lot. I played the original Super Nintendo version, so like there was some things that they changed in the different versions. And that was something that I think would have really helped the game, because a lot of times I wasn't entirely sure who was talking. Most of the times I could kind of figure it out depending on who was in the group and where they were positioned, but I didn't entirely know. But I mean, it didn't distract it any.
The one last thing I wanted to mention also was that I guess actually I would like to change it to 9, because it seems like I have a lot of good points and less bad points. But they didn't palette swap a whole lot of enemies. A lot of them were very original.
Yep. Every area had very unique character enemies. Every now and then you would see like, oh yeah, I saw these guys in this area and they were a little different, but
not a whole
lot. Yeah, not a whole lot. And it was usually like the puny petite enemies that didn't matter.
So yeah, I'm changing my graphics to a 9.
Oh man,
I'm sorry. You convinced me. I convinced me. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more good than bad, I suppose. I wasn't blown away with some of the stuff, but it definitely some of those enemies.
So let's talk about the ending a little bit. The ending, like, visuals. They had, like, okay, so the boss fights were really satisfying as far as, like, the ending goes. And the boss, Kefka himself, was awesome. He looked so awesome. He kind of had that, like, Renaissance painting look to him, like the winged angel, like Renaissance painting look, where he was extraordinarily muscular and very elegantly placed.
He
was
very
he was posed like loungy and like elegant, but like still had that like masculinity to him. I don't know. It was really cool. Yeah. He also was like sitting on a tower of like a bunch of espers. At least that's what I associated him with. That you had to fight your way up to Kefka, and that was pretty cool. Like when you fought,
fighting him up was really cool.
Like you fought all the espers, kind of climbing the tower to him. And as you're fighting them, like they die, and then you move to the next section, and then they die, and you move to the next section, which kind of plays into gameplay a little bit. But in any case, like you get to the top, and there he is, like lounging on this like throne with some like creepy head, and he's accompanied by a creepy head. He doesn't have, well, he kind of has a creepy head, but it's not his head, somebody else's head. And you know, the head does damage to you too.
I had that head once.
And then, like, you had that once?
The head? You talking about the head that pops up out of nowhere?
No, I was just talking about the, like floating head with Kefka, like, when he's sitting on the top of the top of the tower. Anyway, so you kill him there, and then, like, you move up even further, and Kefka, like, falls down from the heavens, and he's, like, this angel and of destruction, and it's cool. It's really, really cool. And he does a lot of unique moves that you don't see anywhere else in the game. And I expect that from a final boss. That's what I want. That said, he was easy, but we'll talk about that in gameplay.
You know, the whole feel of this game kind of has a theme with, like, the opera and the, like you said, the Renaissance, the medieval-y type of feel. Like, there was a specific, like...
It's kind of like, orchestrated in a way that sounds a lot like a church, like a cathedral feel.
Yeah.
A lot of it is very cathedral feeling.
They did good.
They did really good. So after you kill Kefka, he does his like shaky, fall apart, like crumbly thing, which was awesome. And then you have your like cutscene where the team like flies away, and like you have these like little things that's like, you know, Terra, whatever her last name is. And then, you know, you go on to all the characters, and they all have like their weapons or something signifying them on like a table. And that, it was like animated really well. It just looked really good. For a Super Nintendo game, this was awesome. It just looked so cool. Yeah. I could go on and on.
I know you could. I
have so much love for this. It was so cool. All right. I'm okay to go to gameplay if you're ready. Gameplay, I gave it a 9 out of 10.
I also gave it a 9 out of 10.
I kind of want to talk about some of the bad stuff, because the good stuff is too easy to talk about. The random encounters was a little bit high in a lot of areas.
Compared to the first Final Fantasy, that game broke me in ways I've never been broken before.
I know. It
was bad, but you missed out on an item that saved me. If it weren't for this item, I don't know if I had beaten this game.
In the time restraints, yeah.
But there is an action, you don't get it till later, but there's an item you can get. It's only usable by one of the characters, but it stops the random encounters.
I didn't know.
And
I'm tempted to go back in my game and just see if it's there.
I don't know what happened, but you get a character called Mog, which is a Moogle.
It's a Moogle, yeah.
And I just so happened to walk forward and press one of my buttons.
And boop, it was just sitting there for you.
And you know, I was kind of using a guide on and off. I had no idea. It was just, I just so happened to walk up and pick this up.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I did, because I needed it back.
Well, see, okay, so your gameplay style was different than mine. I when you get to the world of Ruin, you are given Celeste, and then you can go and find characters from there. And you kind of, more or less, you have a selection of who you want to pick up and who you don't. And when you get to a party of 4, you can level those guys up as high as you want, and then you can go and get the rest of the characters. You did it that way. I didn't. I didn't even know. I didn't even cross my mind. I just was like, okay, keep going. Next party, next person, next character. And pretty soon I had all my characters, except they were all like level 30 and under. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm severely underleveled. Well, not severely, but I was pretty underleveled for fighting, going to the last dungeon. So I had to spend what appears to be an extra 10 hours in just like leveling up all the characters, which you have to do because the final dungeon you split into 3 teams of 4, and if your characters aren't like leveled up sufficiently, you're not going to be able to get through that dungeon, or if you don't have some sort of wonderful strategy. And that was the only way I was able to get through it, was to spend a bunch of time leveling up all my characters, basically one by one. Because in the dungeons that have decent experience points, I couldn't kill with like all of my low-level characters. I had to have like 2 or 3 good characters and then like a low-level one to just absorb experience. Luckily, you told me about the experience egg, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get through this game in the time restraints either. But
that's one of the things I want to talk about gameplay too. There are so many strategies you could take to beat this game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There were so many strategies that I was taking for your different parties. Like there's just a lot. I mean,
there's a lot of different options. There's a lot of moldability with the way this game is set up.
So everyone can learn magic after you get the magicite.
And everyone can learn any magic.
Level grinding, there was a couple different places that offered a lot of experience points and a lot of ability points, which was awesome. The level syncing, which unfortunately for you didn't work out, but it worked out pretty good early game because you were always like rotating party members, so like they always kind of kept up with you, and you didn't start doing the magic thing until pretty close to halfway. So like the magic didn't really matter any. It was really just a matter of staying leveled up, and that was nice and easy when you kept rotating characters out and the new characters that come in matched your level that your party was already at. I had one character who did not level sync.
I noticed that.
I don't know why.
It was really weird.
He was like level 20 something.
Yeah, I know.
And which is funny, it was Gao.
Yeah. He didn't matter anyway.
I used him early on, and he was a really strong character. Before I was doing like 4-digit damage, he was doing 4-digit damage.
Yeah.
And I put him down actually as my bad for this because I did not like how you absorb or how you got his attacks.
Yeah.
I realized that it was just like a different thing for you to do, but it was such a pain in the butt. And it was a long process.
I have to say that this game's like theme, maybe theme isn't the right word, but this game's like gimmick was the party like rotation thing and the party split thing.
Yeah.
And I think that like having all these different characters with unique abilities was their gimmick of this game. And they tried to change it up as best they could, and Gao just kind of didn't
fall short.
Yeah, it was a cool concept, but like you could only get new abilities or new like for those of you who haven't played the game, which is weird that you're listening to this and you haven't played the game, but if you haven't, it's okay. Gao is like this wild boy. He grew up in the wild with animals, and he learns their abilities by going out with them. So not necessarily animals, but like all the monsters. Now, as you play the game, you encounter more and more monsters, and those monsters can all be found, after you've encountered them once, can all be found in one very specific area. And this area,
is where he grew up.
Is also where Gao can go with the monsters.
It's the only area.
Right. Gao can go with the monsters and learn their ability, basically learning how to be that monster, and then rejoins your party with that ability.
I don't know how it was for you, but for mine, thankfully, if you encounter like 3 different enemies in one battle, you learn all of their enemies.
Oh, really? I didn't notice. I did it like maybe a little bit.
That was helpful because sometimes you wouldn't get him up to like 4 or 5 battles after that. I don't know what the highest was, but it sometimes it was ridiculous, and it was such a long process. Mm-hmm. And at first it was okay, but then I started getting crunched for time, and it's like, I'm not.
This is dumb.
And by the end, my strategy had changed completely anyway. But because of his low level, I barely used him. He was in my poor party.
I enjoyed the concept. Like, it was a smart, unique take on like the Beastmaster sort of deal. Like in some of the previous Final Fantasies, you have like a beast caller, and he was kind of that, where he took on the personality of a monster, and then he could do those moves, and you could pick which monster you wanted him to be. But it just, the way that you gain those abilities was kind of meh.
Speaking of, I want to nitpick at this because I also had this problem with Sabin. For Gao's different moves, it just shows the monster that he has learned the ability. It doesn't tell you what they do, and it berserks you into just using that, or like there's like set moves, which is crappy. But with the same thing with Sabin though, like you would have to go into the menu. You couldn't see these things in the battle menus. For Sabin's different blitz attacks, I would have to look it up on my phone. For one thing, I can't remember combinations to save my life. But if I didn't know, we didn't realize this till we also just looked at the booklet, but it's in the booklet.
Yeah, it is
thankfully.
in the booklet.
I don't know if Gao's stuff is.
I think it is. Yeah, everybody's is in there.
That would have been helpful. Because at one point, I was stuck in a battle with Gao. I accidentally selected a monster move that does water damage, and it was healing the boss I was fighting. And so I was stuck trying to do
and
more
there's not much you could do other than killing him. Yeah. For Sabin, who uses the Blitz attack, basically Blitz was like you had to do
martial arts.
You had to do like a key combination in order to do that move. And he had like a set of like 8 maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
And if you didn't know the key combination, then you couldn't do the move.
You wasted a turn.
Right, yeah. And or if you mess up, you wasted a turn. And you could cancel out and try again, but sometimes you don't realize that you even messed up until it's too late. But also in the like active battle screen, you don't see the key combinations at all. The only way to see the key combinations is either in the booklet or looking it up online, or through the like main menu outside of battle, which doesn't help if you're in the middle of the battle. I understand your complaint.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
No, it was more like the combinations didn't bother me a whole lot. Like, they were all really pretty simple, and they were all very similar to each other, that it was like, okay, if I want to do the fire one, I do this. If I want to do the wind one, I do this. If I want to do the super one, I do this.
I think you have a specific way of
remembering
I don't want to fault the game for my dyslexia, but I think that is part of the problem I was having, because there would be oftentimes where I was doing it in the reverse order.
Yeah, I had that too sometimes.
But I still think it would have been helpful if it had just even showed, because there was menu space for this.
I think that they didn't want to. I think that they wanted you to remember the moveset.
There's too many characters for this, though.
I understand. Yeah, I get it. But I think that was a deliberate thing. Sure. Otherwise, you could have just went through the menu and just selected it. What would have been the point? They wanted something unique, and that's what they came up with. And I liked it. I thought it was cool. I honestly thought it was quicker than going through a menu process. To just do the combination instead of having to go, okay, select Blitz, go all the way down to this one, hit it, choose my enemies.
That's fair, but I mean, if there's been a significant amount of time since you've used Sabin.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You forget the moveset, and then you gotta look it up.
My favorite character to use was Edgar.
Oh, yeah, his
His different, like,
his tools.
mechanics.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so helpful.
It was pretty cool. And a lot of them were really good, too. A lot of them were really, really good. I didn't use the crossbow past, like, the first quarter of the game. But, like, Flash, I did a lot.
Flash, drill, noise blaster, confused all the enemies.
Yeah, what was really cool is the chainsaw, because sometimes, it was kind of like Odin. Sometimes the chainsaw would just vanish. Like, there was no, like, amount of damage that he did. He just killed them. Like, it was just like, yeah, they're dead.
That reminds me of the summons. Well, it made me think about Vanish. Vanish is a magic, but also you can use the Esper Phantom, and it makes your party invisible, which helps. That was one of the strategies I used.
It helps with the physical attackers.
But being able to use these Espers, they had all their different effects, all their learnable magic, and
it was a great way. It was a great use of the magic system.
And no one was confined to only learning white magic, only learning black magic,
I liked
only
that
learning
too.
this kind of magic.
Everyone technically could learn all the magic.
And I had Edgar. Edgar was my character that knew, I think, almost everything.
It seemed like, for whatever reason, Edgar and Cyan, in my game, they learned magic way quicker than the rest. I don't know if it was that way or if it was just coincidence, but it really seemed like that, for whatever reason, those two knew way more magic than the rest of them. I had a few that had very specific, like, okay, Tara is going to learn the high level stuff. She has a lot of MP. She has the morph or trance that boosts her magic ability. Not that you still had a damage cap of 9999, so there was no point in really using it for me, but it was cool.
I didn't use Cyan a whole lot. In fact, I completely skipped his, like, Doma Castle.
His backstory thing.
Which was nice for me because I was on a time crunch.
And I could just tell you, yeah, don't do that.
Just don't do that, yeah. But I mean, on the flip side, that's just more extra backstory that...
Right. I mean, you could have done it. It wouldn't have been that long.
I was crunched
for
time.
you. It wouldn't have taken that long because you had the Moogle who could have
walked through it,
just ran through the stupid thing. But for me, it was a pain in the butt. Although that said, I needed to level grind anyway, so like it was a good thing that I did.
You know, you gave me the heads up, and that my party needed to be. I think you said you'd beat it at like level 50-ish. So all of my characters were at level 50 by the time I officially started collecting everyone.
So by the time you actually got to Kefka, they were almost 60.
They were like walking around all buff, like, where's Kefka?
Where are you?
But it did make the game significantly easier and more like less stressful, and because I was in a time crunch,
it made it a lot easier.
And I could just level grind at home. I hate level grinding, but actually it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was long, but it wasn't too bad in this game. Especially with all the different you find a strategy that works for you.
Stick to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and really the strategy for the boss fights at the end were kind of the same. Like, once you had a handful of characters that had Ultima or Flare or Meteor, all the cures or, you know, that kind of stuff, it was like you spam the same, like, 4 moves. You either were curing or like using life or cure in some aspect, or you're using Ultima or Meteor. Like, that was it.
Auto life was a savior.
Really?
Holy moly.
I didn't use it that much.
What you told me, it was a savior to me because there was a couple times where I needed it. I didn't even know that was an option in this game. I was really surprised that it was
too. Yeah, when I saw Life 2. In my game, it was Life 2. For
Mine
you, it was like
Re-Arise. Like
yours was Erase.
Erase. Re-Raise.
You had Rise, Erase. And then re-raise. So mine was Life 1, Life 2, Life 3. My Life 2, your Erase, was like way above what I thought it should have been if they had a number 3. So I'm like, okay, so if Life 2 completely heals your character all the way up, what does Life 3 do? And then I read it and I'm like, that can't be like auto life. I'm like, no way. And then I started reading into it. And I'm like, sure enough, that's what it was. It blew my mind.
Yeah, record. But
what do you mean?
Well, if you die, it's not like it stays on you.
Oh yeah, but you could just recast it again.
Right.
Yeah. It just there was one fight that it was absolutely mandatory. Kefka's fight, he was a tricky one. So like you fight, Kefka has 4 stages to his fight. You have the first like 2 stages while you're climbing the Kefka tower, or like the tower of espers that he's sitting on. Then you fight Kefka at the very top, and then you fight Kefka again as like the angel of death Kefka. And the first Kefka that you fight, he casts this like death spell on you, and if you have re-rise on, he will cast it a second time.
And then
so it's like he's like, no, you are dead. He's like, you're dead twice. You are dead. So like you have no choice but to fight with a different character. And I'll let me go into that too, because that's an interesting gameplay technique. So the final fight, because you have so many characters, you actually are given a list of all your characters that you brought with, and it's 16 characters, or is it 12? It's 4 times 3,
which is 12.
So there's 12 characters that you can choose from. There's a few more characters than that in the game, but you could only take 12 characters with you to Kefka. When you get to Kefka, you're given the list of 12 characters, and you have to put them in order that you want them to appear in the fight against Kefka. And because there's 4 different stages, each time you move up a stage, any dead characters will be replaced with the next ones in line. So if you have, your first 4, number 5 would be replaced with whatever one died. Number 6 would be replaced with whatever one died. So like you had the potential of, kind of cycling through a handful of characters. It doesn't work if all of your characters die, you're done. Like if your 4 characters you're fighting with end up dying, then you are done. But it gives you a chance to like use a handful of different characters throughout the Kefka fight, which was really unique. It was a very interesting way to go about it. That said, I only had to change the one character just like you did. Yeah. But for me, I put Umaru in there. And it was a dumb move, but it worked out okay. So I think Locke ended up dying for me. And then you go into like the Death Angel Kefka fight. Yeah. And Umaru shows up and I'm like, Umaru, what are you doing here? He's a Yeti. Yeah. And he doesn't have any like he doesn't have any equipable items, and he auto fights. So like I
no control
like
over
at
him,
first I was like, oh crap, this is gonna ruin the game. I'm gonna have to do something. I'm gonna have to fight it again. But then like it was like one less character to have to worry about. Like I could focus on those 3. Like Terra had double cast, so like there was my extra command.
Was so nice.
It was really nice. Terra had double cast, and the rest of my characters I could just keep spamming Ultima or Cure 3, whatever I needed, and I just got through it super quick, and he was pretty easy. But yeah, I mean, I think that the fight with Kefka was maybe 10 minutes long, if that. It was really easy. It was probably the least stressful final boss of the Final Fantasy series so far.
But it kind of made it enjoyable.
It did, yeah. It
wasn't like tough, but it wasn't super, like you had to pay attention.
Right, yeah. If you weren't paying attention, you'd have died. But like if you were just making sure that you were using Cure when you needed to use Cure, you were using Life when you needed to use Life, you were fine.
Last thing that I have on my list.
Okay.
Kind of insignificant. I know you have input. I had like very minor glitches.
Yeah, I kind of noticed it too.
Some things like I flipped a switch and it didn't do the switch thing it was supposed to do until I went back into the room and redid it. But then it's just little stuff like that. Wasn't a big deal, but I did notice there's like some things were like, wait a minute, that's not how that was. I was like missing people.
Yeah.
The dog.
Yeah, the dog. I don't think that was a glitch.
You're right. I was side by side.
Sure, yeah. This was an issue with the way that they built the game. So there's an area where you go to get Terra, and Terra is hidden in this like bookcase, like a stairwell bookcase, and you have to follow the dog down the stairwell. But when I went to the stairwell, the dog did his thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go do something else. And then I came back like 6 hours later, not even in the same like gameplay session. It was like three or 4 gameplay sessions later. I didn't even remember there was a dog there. So I'm there looking for Tara. I'm like, I have no idea where Tara's at. I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, is she even in this town? I had no clue. No NPC gave you any hints. It was just like,
I'll just go find her.
Had no idea where she was. And I looked in the guide that I had, and they're like, follow the dog to Tara. I'm like, follow the dog? I'm like, there's 2 dogs and neither of them are moving. I'm like, where am I supposed to go? So then I had to look it up online, and when you walk into that room, sure enough, there's a dog that runs up and goes down the stairs, and I didn't know.
I didn't notice it either, and you were watching to see if I would, and I
had no idea. Yeah, you didn't know.
If you weren't there, I would have been stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a weird quirk to the way that they designed that spot. Like, I understand where they were going, but if you're not paying attention to that dog going down the stairwell, you would have no idea that she was there.
Yeah.
No idea. And the dog doesn't do it a second time. Like, if you leave and come back, it's gone. So what they should have done is had that be a looped animation. So like every time you go in that room, that dog goes down the stairs. I think that would have solved the problem, but they didn't do that. It was a one-time deal, and if you missed it, you were out. And right. I missed it, and I had to look it up. Luckily, we have the internet now. So, because my guide, and I used like the original Final Fantasy III Super Nintendo guide a little bit when I needed it, and looking it up on there didn't tell me anything. Looked it up on the anthology guide, didn't tell me anything again other than follow the dog, and I'm like, where do I follow the dog to? So yeah, that was kind of annoying. I did get stuck in one other spot in Kefka's tower in the final dungeon. You have to like follow the characters all have to like unlock doors to help the other characters get through because you're in parties of 3. And there was one spot where you unlock the door and you can just continue on. And I did that. I continued on. I got to the other room that I was supposed to go to, but my other 2 parties were like stuck in this room. And I had no idea why. And I looked it up in all my guides, and they're like, there's a door that's right here. You just use the door. And I'm like, there's no door there. So then I had to go all the way back with my party that moved on. I had to come back, and there was a switch that I missed. And I just didn't know. Like, I had to look it up again.
You had no ring. no encounter ring.
Yeah, I know. And this whole time I'm fighting all these random encounters, driving me insane. I probably spent a good hour stuck there.
I'm sure you did. That's why I let you go farther ahead than me, so
I can deal with all the issues, and then I can just be like, okay, do this. Yeah. Like, it'll save you so much headache. Just do this.
Well, I have to say, this game you saved me the most on. I needed to be sat down, honestly, to play this game.
This is a topic that I want to talk about on our Zap chats. Is handheld versus TV mode.
Oh, yes.
And I want to talk about this because this game was a great subject for that, because I did a little bit of both. I have a Super Game Boy. Super Game Boy, and it's basically a handheld Super Nintendo, and I use that for like level grinding and playing it. When the few times that you came over while I was playing, I was trying to do story stuff, and it wasn't happening. And hooking it up to the TV was a very different experience. But I want to talk about that on our Zap chats. Yeah. Like, we don't have to talk about it now, but it was very different in experience. And I think that had you maybe spent a little more time with the TV, I think you would have been a little more engaged, and you would have been able to focus a little better. But I mean, that's just my opinion. Maybe not, but this game definitely was difficult to get into and stay into, and I don't know if it was the game or if it was my personal, like, the crap that's going on in my life that's a little more distracting than me playing Final Fantasy VI. I don't know, but it's just the way my experience was this time around.
Well, last but not least.
Yeah, let's talk about music.
I loved it. I gave it a 9 out of 10.
I gave it a 10 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah. What bothered you?
It wasn't memorable to me till
Really?
the end. Till the end.
What?
To the end.
Every song was memorable to me.
Even the like piano. What was the song called? You just looked this up.
I don't know.
There's a few strange oddball ones.
Yeah, but they were weird, but like they fit the mood of the game for that spot.
There's a few of them that I really didn't like. Not any off the top of my head.
Okay.
But like the overworld, especially the world ruin. I don't know if it was different in the regular world of non-ruin, but that one was kind of meh to me. I mean, I still give it a 9 out of 10.
Oh yeah, no,
Still
it's
amazing.
fine. You can give it whatever score you want. I just am surprised.
I don't think this also might be reflected though because I did have such a hard time playing this game. But I didn't really acknowledge how much I loved the boss music till the very end, especially playing it on the TV. But then the end boss music was just as amazing.
The final, what is it? Like Dancing Mad, I think it's called.
Like that.
Oh man, that is the best song in the game. That is easily the best song, maybe in the whole series.
This is the first.
That's a tough one.
This is the first time I've played 6. I know I'm one of the oddballs. However, I remember hearing Dancing Mad. I remember enjoying it.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't really enjoy it till I actually played the game, though. Like it's changed my mind on. I
think it's funny how that song starts with the like organ playing, and it's like. It's way over dramatic.
The title screen.
But you don't realize that that's the final boss music until you get to the final boss, and it's dramatically fitting.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the title screen, it's a little more like, why is this so dramatic? You know, because all the previous games, the title screen is the like typical, you know, whatever that is.
Right.
The typical Final Fantasy like crystal theme song. But yeah, Kefka's music in general was really good. His boss fight, but also his theme song is just, it's fitting. It's fitting for his craziness. It's great. It's wonderful.
Lots of parallels with 7. I hate to talk about 7 because it hasn't come into existence yet.
For our podcast.
Right. But having played 7, and since you mentioned Chrono Trigger earlier, I can do this now. Oh my gosh, 7. Like, there's...
The parallels to 7 are...
There are a few other, like, I could hear different songs from different games as well, but mostly 7
Mostly 7.
Out.
It really kind of felt like 6... Final Fantasy 6 was almost like Final Fantasy 7's beta. Like,
yeah, really.
Like Final Fantasy 7, like... test run. Like they were gonna do Final Fantasy 7 and they're like, you know, some of these story elements would fit better for a different game, so let's just cut them out of this one and put them in this one. And then like it turned into a different game, but it like still had so many similarities and parallels. I mean, the story was very much like 7 in multiple aspects, not in every element.
The outline.
Yeah, like
the structure.
Some of the structure was very similar to 7. Obviously, it's not 7.
Right.
It's
very different.
It's different, but the similarities are strong. But the music really is very, very similar.
There were times where I was like, is this 7 playing? What are the caves?
There's some that like I swear I can hear like Aeris's theme like in it. And like there are some that have like little segments of the song that sounds like another song from 7, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds so much like 7, and then it like won't be. And I'm like, it sounded like 7 though. Like it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't really know, like I don't know what the process was when they were, you know, how close the two games were, like time related. You would think though that when they're building the songs from 6 and then they go to 7, that they wouldn't reuse any of the melodies from any of the past games. I mean, unless they specifically wanted to. It was very interesting to me that they had so many similarities. I mean, that said, Final Fantasy VII's music is more Super Nintendo-esque. It's more, you know, 16-bit sound than, you know, maybe 8 or 9 is way more enhanced in the music. but like
More
seven is very like
It's
limited.
It's like on the border.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Between the two.
Yeah, it kind of
Like
is.
things definitely improved, but there was still...
It's almost I maybe it's because they were originally planning it to be on the Nintendo 64 and then they like bumped it up to the PlayStation, so like they had those like old 8-bit songs instead of the nicer ones. I don't know. This isn't about Final Fantasy 7. This is about Final Fantasy 6. And the music was amazing. I loved it. I loved every single song. I can't say that I disliked any songs. Really, even the sound effects were really good.
Yeah. The magic sounds.
The airship, there was a few airship noises that were made. I mean, just, it was neat. It was a good
laugh.
Kefka's laugh, man. That is the most iconic sound in all of the Super Nintendo genre. Like, I can't think of any other sound other than like the Mario coin. Like, but there's very few sounds of the Final Fantasy. Very few sounds in the Super Nintendo like library that it's like that is from that game. And Kefka's laugh is like instant. Like anybody who is anything about Final Fantasy in general knows Kefka's laugh. It's just it's great.
I like the sound, yeah. So overall
I gave it an 8 out of 10, which seems weird
because mine's a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, maybe I will bump it up to a 9 at least. My biggest problem was I had such a hard time getting into it. And I don't know if that, again, I'm not really sure if that was a story issue, because I feel like it kind of was. It was kind of boring and dry the first, 10 hours of the game. And then you get to, I got to the Opera House and just fell in love with the game again, and then I wanted to play it. And then we got to the second half of the game, and it was kind of boring again. So that was, my biggest flaw of the game as a whole, which is why I think I gave it more of an 8, because I was bored about half of the game.
My thing is, I always have this problem. I don't know why. I just am a natural procrastinator. I work better in a deadline-induced panic. The overall, when I'm scoring all of this stuff, I'm like, apparently I loved this game. I remember having a hard time sitting down and doing it. I think the mentality of knowing that this is going to be a very long game is what intimidated me.
I thought that too, but still, I don't know.
For me, the story was amazing. The gameplay made this game super playable and easily moldable to you as a person, that I think overall this game deserves it. Probably would even deserve a 10, but I'm harsh.
Well, I think I'm going to stick with my 8. I think that this gameplay for me, every individual section had its flaws and its strengths. And obviously, I love the graphics, I love the music, everything else was 9 and 10. But as a whole, and that's what the overall score is for. As a whole, the gameplay for me, I kind of got bored too much. And I think that I'm not saying that the game itself was a boring game, because it wasn't. It just, for whatever reason, every time I sat down to play the game, I would find myself falling asleep, or I would just not be into it and want to stop. And I think that's why we've drug it out as long as we have. Literally, we're uploading this on the 1st of September. This is the 1st of September. We are recording the day this goes live. So literally, you're hearing what we're recording just a few hours ago. So we're pushing it to the very last minute, and even then I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna do this. I don't know if we're gonna make it to the first.
Pushed it back once.
Right, and that's why we didn't want to push it out again. So I really just kind of feel like, maybe it does deserve an 8. As far as my personal gameplay goes, it just I found myself bored too much.
I would be interested to, several years from now, go back to visiting different games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And seeing how we would score them different, because, not that we have to dive into this, but where I am specifically in my life and where you are, we're in very unique situations this month and last month and the month before, where I think that might have an actual impact on
sure.
Which is, I think, probably one of the reasons why I scored it so high is because to me, when I'm looking at this, I go, apparently I liked this game. It's just, it was such a struggle to play this game for me.
Yeah.
And I really think that is part, for me, just where I am in my life right now. For this specific time, it was just hard to sit down to play any game.
Yeah. I want to say that was the case for me as well. And I mean, it sucks that kind of affects my overall view of the game. That, like, yeah, at this point in my life, I'm going through weird things that I wouldn't otherwise, you know, if I was going through my normal day to day, I wouldn't normally be dealing with that. But, like, it shouldn't reflect on the game, but it kind of did. Because my brain, it didn't pull me in enough that my brain was maybe elsewhere.
I think this would be a very interesting Zap Chats topic.
Yeah,
sure. I mean, really think about it. For me, it used to be that I went to games to escape reality, where this was more of a, I have to do this.
Yeah. And maybe that's where, you know, because we've been doing this for a podcast for so long now, maybe that's kind of where it's heading to. Like, I have to get this done.
Again, though, a very long game. We knew it was a long game.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Intimidating.
And I think that had we actually dedicated ourselves earlier, I think we would have... Because I didn't really dedicate myself to this game until, like, September 1st. And I'm like, oh, crap.
We have to do this.
You know, and here now it's October 1st, and it's like due today, literally today. This is October 1st, and it's due today. So, I don't know. But in any case... That's
a chat for another Zap Chat.
I know. I really did enjoy the game. I mean, an 8 isn't a bad experience. It's just there was a few, you know, it kind of bored me a little bit in some areas, and I docked it for it.
I definitely think if you're a Final Fantasy fan and haven't played this game, I understand why people say that this is the best.
This is one of the greats. Yes. Absolutely. I don't know.
I don't think it's my favorite of all of them. But I understand why some people feel that way.
Absolutely. As like a Super Nintendo era game goes, this is way high. I mean, obviously it's towards the end of the Super Nintendo system itself. So, like, Square knew what they were doing, but it still was like, I don't know, it was at its peak. It was a good game. You know, I can see where people really enjoyed it.
Right.
And could call it their favorite, or probably one of their first, or whatever. You know, for me, that was 7. For other people, it was 6, or whatever. So, yeah, good game. I ended up giving it a 46 out of 50.
Got a 45 out of 50.
45, so that's a 91 out of 100. It's an A. It's almost an A. It's an A minus.
It's an A. We'll give it extra credit.
Yeah. I mean, awesome game. It really, truly is a great game. If you play it for the story, maybe use a few cheat codes. If you're playing it just for the story, just toss a couple, like, you know, cheat codes in there and just have fun and enjoy the story, because it's a great one. It really is. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't talk about. There's a lot of secrets that we may not even know about. There's so many different, you know, gameplay styles that you can take on this game that, you know, could be explored. I mean, you can make it really hard on yourself and try and stay under-leveled the whole time. You could go into Kefka with just, like, Celeste and was Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's it for Final Fantasy VI. We're not playing Final Fantasy VII just yet. It is in the near future. We have a couple other games that we want to play before we start Final Fantasy VII.
Want to get it out there before the remake.
Yeah, absolutely. It will get done before the remake for sure. But I noticed that playing some of the RPGs live, it wasn't happening very well. So I probably won't be playing any more RPGs, streaming them.
Not going to do 7?
I don't think so. It's too much like sitting and reading to myself and there's no one else in the chat room, so it's like I'm reading to myself for no reason, and it's dumb, it's boring. So yeah, in any case, we will be playing 7 very soon. It won't be the next game, but it will be coming up soon. We don't exactly know what the next game is going to be.
I have a lot of different things popping up.
There's a handful of my friends that want to play a couple different games, so I need to like work out exactly what we're going to play next. But we'll post it on our website for exactly what we're going to be doing as soon as we know for sure. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode of Final Fantasy VI. We worked really hard on this game, and hopefully you can hear our dedication to the game in this podcast. Please review our podcast on pretty much any review or any podcast app.
Review us and we'll review you. On
ZapChats. Yeah, absolutely. We will read all of our reviews on ZapChats. We specifically watch iTunes, so if you don't review us on iTunes, just shoot us an email and say, hey, I reviewed you on whatever app, and I'll read it out on our ZapChats. You just gotta let me know. So thanks again for listening to this episode. If you want to see our pretty faces on the computer or phone screen, you can go to our YouTube channel, just look up ZapNight. Subscribe while you're there. If you're watching us on there, thank you, and subscribe because you're awesome. And we will see you guys on the next one.